The autumn wind cut through my jacket like 1,000 frozen needles, each gust reminding me how empty this house had become. I stood at the living room window, watching dead leaves dance across the driveway of the home Margaret and I had built 42 years ago. The maple tree we'd planted when Sarah was born now towered over the garage, its branches bare and reaching toward a gray October sky that seemed to mirror the hollow ache in my chest. 4 years. 4 years since cancer took my Margaret. 4 years since the laughter died in these walls. I turned from the window, my eyes falling on the photograph that still sat on the mantel. Sarah's college graduation. She stood between Margaret and me, her smile bright with promise, her engineering degree clutched in her hands. My daughter, my brilliant, stubborn, beautiful daughter who'd followed me into the profession I'd loved for 40 years. But that photo was 7 years old now. Before Victor. Before everything changed. I picked up my coffee mug, cold now, and walked to the kitchen. The house creaked around me, too big for one old man. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a workshop in the garage that I hadn't entered in months. Margaret had wanted to downsize after I retired from Morrison Engineering, but I'd resisted. This was our home. Our memories. Now it just felt like a mausoleum. My phone buzzed on the counter. Probably James from the senior center, asking if I'd come to poker night again. I'd made excuses for the past 3 months. What was the point? Sitting around with other widowers, pretending we were still living instead of just existing? I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Probably spam. I set the phone down without answering. It buzzed again immediately. Then again, with a sigh, I answered. Hello? Silence. Then breathing. Heavy, panicked breathing. Hello? I repeated, about to hang up. Grandpa? I froze. That voice. I knew that voice, but it couldn't be. Emma? I whispered. My granddaughter. Sarah's daughter. 16 years old now, though I'd only seen her twice since Margaret's funeral. Victor had made sure of that, always with excuses about busy schedules and Emma's fragile state after her mother's death. Sarah's death. 2 years ago. A car accident on Interstate 84 near the Columbia River Gorge. Single car crash, they said. Drove off the embankment. They found her car in the river, but her body had been swept away, presumed dead. The funeral had been a closed casket. Empty, really. Nothing to bury. Victor had stood there in his expensive suit, Emma beside him in black, both of them dry-eyed while I'd wept for the daughter I'd lost so soon after losing my wife. Grandpa, I need you to listen, Emma said, her voice shaking. Don't ask questions. Don't say anything that anyone could overhear. Are you alone? Yes, I'm alone. I'm always alone. Emma, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm outside, in the driveway. I need you to come outside right now and get in the car. I need to tell you something, and we can't talk in your house. What? Emma, it's 7 in the morning. Shouldn't you be in school? Does your father know where you are? Grandpa, please! Her voice cracked with urgency. Please, just trust me. Come outside. Now. I'm in a gray Tesla parked across the street. Please! The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, my engineer's mind trying to process this logically. Emma never called me. Victor had effectively cut me off from my granddaughter after Sarah's death, and I'd been too broken, too tired to fight him for visitation rights. The lawyer had said it would be difficult anyway since Victor had full custody and I was just the grandfather. Now she was outside, alone, scared. I grabbed my jacket and my keys, old instincts from 40 years of fatherhood kicking in. Whatever was happening, Emma needed me. That was all that mattered. The morning air bit at my face as I stepped outside. Sure enough, a gray Tesla Model Y sat across the street, tinted windows making it impossible to see inside. As I approached, the passenger door clicked open. I slid into the seat. Emma sat behind the wheel, and my heart nearly broke at the sight of her. She'd grown so much in 2 years. No longer the 14-year-old child I'd seen at the funeral, but a young woman with Sarah's sharp features and Margaret's hazel eyes. But those eyes were red-rimmed, and her hands shook on the steering wheel. Emma, what's going on? She looked at me, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Grandpa, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I haven't called. I'm sorry I haven't visited. He wouldn't let me. He monitors everything. My phone, my laptop, my friends, everything. Victor? Why would he? Because Mom is alive. The world stopped. The hum of the car's electric engine faded. The sound of wind in the trees disappeared. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, thundering in my ears. What did you say? Mom is alive, Grandpa. The accident was staged. Dad faked her death. She's been hiding for 2 years, and I just found out 3 days ago. I stared at my granddaughter. This had to be a breakdown. Grief did terrible things to people. I knew that better than anyone. Maybe Victor had been right to keep her away from me. Maybe she needed professional help, not an old man who could barely take care of himself. Emma, honey, I know you miss your mother. I miss her too, every single day. But Sarah is gone. We both saw. We saw nothing. Emma's voice rose, sharp with frustration. There was no body, Grandpa. They never found her. Dad had a closed casket funeral for an empty coffin. Don't you think that's strange? The river is what Dad wanted everyone to believe. But I have proof. Mom left me a message. She's been leaving me messages for 2 years in places Dad would never think to look. In old books she gave me before she died. In a cloud account Dad doesn't know about. Grandpa, she's alive, and she needs our help. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe that my daughter was still alive. But this sounded like the desperate fantasy of a grieving child. Or worse, a cruel delusion. Where's this proof? I asked gently. Emma pulled out a phone, not her regular phone, she explained, but a prepaid one she'd bought with cash. She opened a video file and handed me the phone. The screen showed Sarah, my daughter, looking thinner, older, her hair shorter and darker than I remembered, but unmistakably her. She sat in what looked like a small apartment, speaking directly to the camera with the same intense focus she'd always had when explaining a complex engineering problem. Emma, if you're seeing this, it means you found my messages. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry I had to leave you. I'm so sorry I had to let you think I was dead. But your father gave me no choice. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Sarah continued, I discovered something terrible. After Grandpa sold Morrison Engineering to Victor, I stayed on as chief engineer like we agreed. But I started noticing irregularities in the accounts. Money disappearing, payments to shell companies, fabricated invoices. At first, I thought it was just sloppy bookkeeping. But the more I dug, the more I realized it was deliberate. Victor was embezzling millions from the company. He was using Morrison Engineering as a front for money laundering. She paused, wiping her eyes. When I confronted him with the evidence, he told me I had 2 choices. Keep quiet and let him continue, or he'd make sure I never worked in engineering again. He said he'd destroy my reputation, take Emma away from me, and make my life hell. I thought I could go to the police, so I gathered more evidence. But before I could, he escalated. Sarah's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He tried to kill me, Emma. The accident wasn't an accident. He tampered with my brakes. I survived by sheer luck. I managed to jump out before the car went over, but I realized, if he thought I was dead, maybe I'd have time to build a real case against him. So I let him think it worked. I've been in hiding ever since, gathering evidence, working with people who can help. But I couldn't risk contacting you until I was sure you were safe. The video ended. I sat in silence, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of... There's more, Emma said quietly. She scrolled through the phone, showing me document after document. Bank statements with Victor's name, wire transfers to offshore accounts, invoices for work that was never done, emails discussing moving product, except Morrison Engineering didn't manufacture products anymore. We'd shifted to consulting years ago. Mom has been watching Dad this whole time, Emma explained. She's been documenting everything. She has help from a private investigator named Marcus Chen, who used to work white-collar crime for the FBI. They're building a case, but they need one more thing. They need access to Dad's personal computer, the one he keeps in his home office. That's where he keeps the original files, the ones that tie him directly to the fraud. Why doesn't Marcus just break in? Because it would be illegal and inadmissible in court. But if I could get access, since I live there, if I could copy those files. Emma met my eyes. Grandpa, I can't do this alone. I'm 16. I don't know how to handle this. Mom sent me the last video 3 days ago saying she's ready to come out of hiding, but only if we can get that evidence. She said I should go to you. She said you're the only person she trusts besides me. Anger surged through me. Hot, righteous anger I hadn't felt since Margaret died. Victor had taken my daughter from me, had taken my granddaughter, had stolen the company I'd built from nothing and turned it into a criminal enterprise, had let me grieve for 2 years for a daughter who was alive. Where is your mother now? I asked, my voice steady despite the fury burning in my chest. I don't know exactly. She won't tell me in case Dad finds out somehow. But Marcus has been my contact. He's the one who arranged for me to get this phone, who's been passing messages back and forth. Mom says once we have the evidence, she'll come forward. But Grandpa, Dad can't know anything is wrong. I have to go back home and act normal. That's why I needed to tell you in person, somewhere he couldn't hear. Does Victor track your car? This isn't my car. This is Marcus's. He lent it to me this morning. Dad thinks I'm at an early morning student council meeting. I have to be back at school by 8:30 or he'll know something is wrong. I looked at my granddaughter, brave, terrified, determined, and saw Sarah in her. Saw the same stubborn courage Margaret had possessed. This child had been carrying this burden alone for 3 days, and now she'd come to me for help. What do you need me to do? I asked. Relief flooded Emma's face. Mom's plan is this. This Saturday, Dad is flying to Seattle for a business conference. He'll be gone from Friday night until Sunday afternoon. Mom wants us to get into his office while he's gone, copy everything from his computer, and get it to Marcus. But Grandpa, I don't know how to do that. I don't know anything about computers beyond basic stuff. I almost smiled. Emma, I spent 40 years in engineering. I built Morrison Engineering from scratch in 1985, when personal computers were still new. I may be old, but I know my way around data extraction. So you'll help? Of course I'll help. But we need to be smart about this. We need a plan, and we need to keep you safe above all else. I pulled out my own phone. Give me Marcus's number. I want to talk to him before we do anything. Emma hesitated. You can't call from your regular phone. Dad might be monitoring it. What? How would he? Grandpa, Dad has been paranoid for 2 years. After Mom died, he hired a tech company to set up security at the house. Cameras everywhere. And I think he might have put monitoring software on your phone too. He was here about 6 months ago, remember? Said he wanted to check on you, but he was alone in your living room for a while. Ice ran down my spine. I remembered that visit. Victor showing up unannounced, claiming he wanted to clear the air and let me see Emma more often. He'd seemed sincere. I'd even felt grateful, thinking maybe he was finally letting go of whatever grudge he'd held. It had been a lie. All of it. Then we need to be very careful, I said. What's our next move? Marcus wants to meet you. Today, if possible. Are you free this afternoon? I thought about my calendar. Empty, like every day for the past 4 years. I'm free. He'll meet you at Powell's Books downtown, 2 o'clock, 2nd floor, blue room, in the poetry section. He'll find you. How will I know him? He'll know you. Mom gave him your photo. Emma checked the dashboard clock. I need to go. I'm cutting it close as it is. I grabbed her hand before she could put the car in gear. Emma, I need you to promise me something. If at any point you feel unsafe, if your father suspects anything, you get out. You call 911. You don't try to be brave or protect anyone. You understand? She nodded, tears welling up again. I just want my mom back, Grandpa. I know, sweetheart, I know. And we're going to make that happen. I got out of the car and watched Emma drive away, my mind already racing through everything I'd just learned. Sarah was alive. My daughter was alive. That should have filled me with joy, but all I felt was a cold, calculated fury at the man who'd put us all through this hell. Victor Morrison. He'd taken Sarah's name when they married, claimed it was because he respected the Morrison engineering legacy. I'd thought it was romantic. Now I realized it had been strategic. He'd wanted access to everything we'd built, and I'd handed it to him. After Margaret died, I couldn't handle the company anymore. Couldn't focus, couldn't care. Victor had been so understanding, so supportive. He'd offered to buy me out, promised to take care of Sarah and Emma, said I deserved to rest after 40 years of hard work. The price had been fair. The lawyers had all said so. I'd been so stupid, so blind, but I wasn't blind anymore. I went back inside, but I didn't pick up my phone. If Emma was right about monitoring software, I needed to be careful. Instead, I went to my workshop for the first time in months. Dust covered everything, but my old tools were still there. My old desktop computer, disconnected from the internet, stored in the corner. I'd built Morrison Engineering by being meticulous, by planning ahead, by anticipating problems. Those skills hadn't left me. They'd just been dormant, buried under grief and loss. Well, they were awake now. I spent the morning preparing, making lists, checking old files I'd kept from my days at the company. I'd sold the business to Victor, but I'd kept copies of everything. Corporate bylaws, financial records, operational procedures, all stored on this old computer, backed up on external drives. If Victor was embezzling money, I wanted to know the scope. I wanted to understand exactly what he'd done to my company. What I found made my blood run cold. At 2 o'clock, I stood in the poetry section of Powell's books, pretending to browse a collection of Robert Frost, while my mind churned with everything I'd discovered. The numbers didn't lie. In the 4 years since I'd sold him the company, Victor had systematically gutted Morrison Engineering. He'd laid off most of the old staff, the people I'd worked with for decades. He'd brought in new people names I didn't recognize. He'd shifted the company focus from legitimate consulting work to something else entirely. And the money. God, the money. Even in my limited files, I could see millions disappearing into accounts I'd never heard of. Mr. Morrison? I turned. The man who'd approached was in his 40s, Asian American, wearing jeans and a worn leather jacket. He didn't look like a former FBI agent. He looked like he belonged in Portland casual, understated, blending in perfectly with the bookstore crowd. Marcus Chen, he said quietly, extending his hand. Thank you for meeting me. We shook hands. His grip was firm, confident. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? I asked. Follow me. He led me through the stacks to a small reading nook in the corner, away from other customers. We sat in adjacent chairs, positioned so we could both see anyone approaching. Emma said you wanted to see proof before committing to anything, Marcus began. Smart. I'd be suspicious too if someone told me my dead daughter was alive. Show me, I said simply. He pulled out a tablet and opened a video file. This one was different from what Emma had shown me. This one was recent, maybe hours old. Sarah sat in the same small apartment, but morning light streamed through the window behind her. Dad, she said, and my throat tightened at hearing her call me that. I know you must be reeling right now. I know I should have found a way to contact you sooner, but I couldn't risk it. Victor would have killed you if he thought you knew I was alive. He's killed before, Dad. That's what we discovered 3 years ago, before he even married me, before he even worked at Morrison Engineering. He was involved in another embezzlement scheme in California. An employee discovered it and died in a mugging gone wrong. The police ruled it random violence, but Marcus found the connection. She leaned closer to the camera. Her eyes, Margaret's eyes, filled with tears. I've missed you so much. I've wanted to call you 1,000 times. When I heard you'd stopped going to the senior center, stopped seeing your friends, I wanted to shake you and tell you to live, but I couldn't. Victor was watching you, Dad. He has been this whole time, making sure you didn't become a problem. If I'd contacted you, he would have known, and he would have eliminated you as a threat. Sarah wiped her eyes. But now we're ready. Marcus has everything we need except the one final piece, Victor's personal files. With those, we can prove not just the embezzlement, but the money laundering, the fraud, everything. The FBI is ready to move once we have that evidence. They've been building a case against the entire network Victor's a part of. He's not working alone, Dad. This is bigger than just Morrison Engineering. The video ended. I sat in silence, processing. Finally, I looked at Marcus. Tell me everything. He did. For the next hour, in quiet voices, Marcus laid out the full scope of what Sarah had uncovered. Victor was part of a sophisticated money laundering operation that used legitimate small businesses as fronts. He'd marry into companies or buy them outright, then use them to wash money from various illegal sources, drug trafficking, fraud, embezzlement from other companies. Morrison Engineering was just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Sarah stumbled onto it by accident, Marcus explained. She noticed the irregularities in the accounts and started investigating. By the time she realized how deep it went, Victor knew she was suspicious. He moved fast. The brake tampering on her car was meant to look like an accident. But Sarah's smart. She'd been worried enough that she'd started taking precautions. She'd set up dead drops, encrypted communications, emergency plans. When she realized her brakes had been cut, she managed to jump out before the car went over the embankment. She let herself be swept downstream, got out of the river a mile away, and disappeared. And you've been helping her ever since? I was already investigating Victor when Sarah contacted me. I'd been brought in as a consultant by the FBI after they noticed patterns in money movement that connected to his network. When Sarah reached out with her evidence, we realized she could be our key witness, but only if we could keep her alive long enough to testify. And Emma? How did she find out? Sarah made the call that it was time. Emma's 16 now, old enough to help, old enough to make decisions. And frankly, Sarah was worried. Victor's been tightening his control over Emma, monitoring her phone, tracking her movements, limiting her contact with friends. Sarah was afraid of what might happen when Emma turned 18 and tried to leave for college. Would Victor let her go? Or would she become a liability too? My hands clenched into fists. That son of a bitch won't touch my granddaughter. That's why we need to move now, Marcus said. This weekend, while he's in Seattle, we get the evidence. Monday morning, the FBI moves in. By Monday night, Victor's in custody, and Sarah can come home. What do you need from me? Saturday night, you need to go to Victor's house. Emma will let you in. She has the alarm codes and knows how to avoid the cameras Victor doesn't know she knows about. You'll have approximately 4 hours while the housekeeper is away, and Emma keeps watch. You need to access Victor's office computer, copy everything from his hard drive, and get out without leaving any trace you were there. Can Emma do this without you? The copying, I mean, with your help. Yes. She's actually quite good with technology. Victor's been too controlling to realize how much she's learned on her own. But you'll need to be the adult in the room. If something goes wrong, you're the one who can call for help. Make decisions. Keep her safe. I met his eyes. If Victor finds out, if he comes back early, then you get Emma out of that house and you call 911. The FBI has units ready to move. They're already watching Victor. They'll move faster than he can react. Will Sarah be there? Saturday night? Marcus shook his head. Too risky. Victor knows her face, knows her voice. If any neighbor saw her, if any camera caught her, it would tip him off. No, Sarah stays in hiding until after Victor's arrest. I'm sorry. I wanted to argue, wanted to demand to see my daughter, but I understood. We were so close. Just a few more days. One more thing, I said. I want to understand what we're looking for. Can you show me the kind of evidence we need? Marcus pulled out another file on his tablet, walking me through the technical details. Shell companies, wire transfers, falsified invoices. As he explained, my engineering mind kicked in. Analyzing the pattern, understanding the system Victor had built. It was actually quite sophisticated. Clever, even. But like any system, it had weaknesses, points of failure, and we were about to exploit every single one. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I had to act normal, had to pretend nothing had changed. I even went to poker night on Thursday, forcing myself to laugh at James's terrible jokes and fold when I should have played my hand, all while my mind raced with plans and contingencies. Emma texted me twice from her prepaid phone, brief messages. Dad confirmed Seattle Friday, Sunday, and housekeeper leaves at 7 p.m. Saturday. Friday evening, I packed a bag with the tools I'd need. External hard drive, USB cables, a laptop I'd purchased years ago and never used, still in its box. Gloves, a small flashlight. I felt ridiculous, like a character in a spy movie, but Marcus had been clear. We couldn't leave fingerprints, couldn't leave any trace. Saturday dragged. I tried to read, tried to watch television. Finally, at 6:30, I got in my car and drove to Victor's house in the West Hills neighborhood, the house he'd bought with money stolen from my company. I parked 2 blocks away and walked through the October evening, the sun already setting behind the hills. Emma met me at the side door at exactly 7:15, wearing dark clothes, her face pale but determined. "The housekeeper just left," she whispered. "Dad called an hour ago from Seattle. Everything's on schedule." Inside, the house was silent and cold. Victor had always kept it too cold. Sarah used to complain about it. I followed Emma through hallways, lined with expensive art, past rooms furnished with designer furniture, all bought with stolen money. Victor's office was on the 2nd floor, a large room overlooking the backyard. Emma closed the blinds while I approached the desk. 3 monitors, a tower computer underneath, high-end equipment. "Do you know his password?" I asked. Emma shook her head. "But Mom said you wouldn't need it. She said you'd know how to reset it." I did. It was an old trick, one I'd used decades ago when employees forgot their passwords. Boot in safe mode, access the administrator account, reset the password without logging in. The method had evolved over the years, but the principle remained the same. It took me 20 minutes of careful work, but finally, I was in. "Oh my God," I whispered. The files were all there. Hundreds of documents, spreadsheets, emails. Victor hadn't even tried to hide them particularly well. He'd simply relied on password protection and the assumption that no one would access his personal computer. Arrogant. Stupid. "Start copying everything," I told Emma, plugging in the external hard drive. "I'm going to document what we're seeing." As the files transferred, I opened documents at random, photographing screens with my phone. Emails discussing shipments that didn't exist. Invoices for equipment never purchased. Wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands. A spreadsheet labeled quarterly distribution that showed payments to a dozen different people. And at the bottom of one folder, I found something that made my blood run cold. A document titled Contingency Plans. I opened it. My hands shook as I read. It was a list. Sarah's name was at the top, with a date 2 years ago and a checkmark. Below her name, resolved. Vehicle incident. Below that, Robert Morrison. Monitor. Action, if interferes. Below that, Emma Morrison. Control. Action, if non-compliant after 18. There were other names, too. People I didn't recognize, all with notes beside them, some with check marks. Victor had been planning this for years. Every person who could expose him, every potential threat, carefully documented and categorized. My daughter's name, my granddaughter's name, all marked for elimination. "Grandpa?" I looked up. Emma stood beside me, staring at the screen, her face white. That's a kill list," she whispered. "We're taking this," I said, photographing every page. "This is evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. This buries him." The hard drive was still copying. We had over an hour left. Emma and I sat in the office, neither of us speaking, both of us processing what we'd discovered. Finally, Emma asked, "Do you think Mom saw this before the accident?" "I don't know. Maybe that's why she ran instead of going to the police. Maybe she realized how deep this went. What do we do when the copying is done? We shut everything down, make sure nothing looks disturbed, and we get out. Then we get this evidence to Marcus, and we let the FBI do their job. At 9:45, the hard drive finished copying. I carefully shut down the computer, returned everything to exactly how we'd found it. Emma and I walked through the house one more time, checking every room, making sure we'd left no trace. As we reached the front door, Emma's phone buzzed. Her real phone. She looked at the screen and her face went white. "It's Dad. He's calling me." "Answer it," I said quietly. Act natural, Emma answered, putting the phone on speaker. Hi, Dad. Victor's voice filled the entryway, smooth and pleasant. Hi, sweetheart. Just calling to check in. Is everything okay there? Everything's fine. Just watching TV. The house is quiet. Good. Listen, I know this is last minute, but I'm actually flying back tonight instead of tomorrow. I should be home around midnight. Don't wait up, you need your sleep for school Monday. Emma's eyes met mine in panic. Oh, okay, she managed. Why are you coming back early? Business finished sooner than expected. See you in the morning, sweetheart. He hung up. We had 2 hours. Maybe less if he was lying about his flight time. We need to leave, I said. Right now. But we got everything. Emma, he knows. I don't know how, but he knows something is wrong. That call wasn't random. We need to get you out of this house. But if I leave, if I'm not here when he gets home, then we call the police. We call Marcus. We move now instead of Monday. Emma's phone buzzed again. A text this time. From Marcus. Victor's not in Seattle. He's in Portland. He's on his way to his house. Get out now. My heart stopped. Run, I said. We ran. Out the side door, across the yard, into the darkness. I could hear Emma's breathing, harsh and panicked. As we stumbled through the neighbor's garden, my old legs protested, my heart hammering, but adrenaline pushed me forward. Behind us, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Victor was home. We made it to my car, parked 2 blocks away. I started the engine with shaking hands, pulling away from the curb as calmly as I could manage. In my rearview mirror, I saw headlights turn onto the street behind us. He's following us, Emma whispered. Call 911, I said. Tell them we're being pursued, that we have evidence of a crime, that we need immediate assistance. Emma made the call, her voice surprisingly steady as she explained our situation to the operator. The dispatcher told us to drive to the nearest police station, that units were being dispatched to intercept. But Victor was faster. His car, a black BMW, pulled alongside us at a stoplight. Through the window, I could see his face. No longer the concerned son-in-law, no longer the grieving widower, just cold calculation and rage. The light changed. I accelerated, but so did he. He swerved in front of me, forcing me to brake hard. Emma screamed as we skidded, my old sedan no match for his newer, faster car. Then, suddenly, there were sirens. Police cars, coming from both directions, boxing Victor in. He tried to run, actually put his car in reverse and tried to flee. But there was nowhere to go. Within seconds, officers had surrounded his vehicle, guns drawn, shouting commands. I pulled over, my hands still gripping the steering wheel, and watched as they dragged Victor from his car, watched as they put him in handcuffs, watched as the man who'd stolen everything from my family was finally caught. Emma was crying. I was crying. We sat in my car, holding each other, as police officers approached to take our statements. And then I saw her, Sarah, my daughter, running across the parking lot, Marcus beside her, both of them having followed when Marcus realized Victor had set a trap. Sarah pulled open Emma's door and dragged her daughter into her arms, both of them sobbing, holding each other for the first time in 2 years. I got out of the car slowly, my old body protesting, and Sarah looked up. Our eyes met. Dad, she whispered. I pulled my daughter into my arms and held her while she cried, held my baby girl, who I'd thought was dead, who'd sacrificed everything to expose the truth, who'd been brave and brilliant and so strong. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here, sweetheart. You're safe now. The rest of that night was a blur. Police statements. FBI agents arriving to take possession of the hard drive Emma and I had copied. Marcus explaining how Victor had somehow gotten wind of the investigation and had rushed back to protect his files, only to find us there. It turned out Victor had installed motion sensors in his office that we'd missed. When the computer booted up, it sent him an alert. He'd been on his way back from Seattle, where he really had been when he got the notification. He'd gambled on arriving before we left, on catching us in the act, on eliminating the threat once and for all. He'd lost. The FBI found everything they needed on that hard drive. Not just evidence of Victor's crimes, but evidence connecting him to a network of criminals across 3 states. By Monday morning, 17 people were under arrest. Morrison Engineering was gone. Bankrupted by Victor's theft, it couldn't be saved. The company I'd built over 40 years, the legacy I'd hoped to leave, was dead. But my family was alive. Sarah moved in with me while she rebuilt her life. Emma came too. A judge granted Sarah immediate custody once Victor's crimes became known. The house was too big for one old man, but it was perfect for 3 generations trying to heal. Therapy helped. Emma saw a counselor who specialized in trauma. Sarah worked through her survivor's guilt, her anger at what she'd lost. I worked through my grief for Margaret, for the company, for the 2 years I'd thought my daughter was dead. It wasn't easy. Some days were harder than others. Emma had nightmares. Sarah still jumped at unexpected noises. I still woke up reaching for Margaret, forgetting for a moment that she was gone. But we had each other. That was something. That was everything. 6 months later, on a spring morning, I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee while Sarah made breakfast and Emma did homework at the table. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and I could hear birds singing in the maple tree outside. Sarah caught me watching them and smiled. "What are you thinking about?" "Your mother," I said honestly. "She would have loved this, having you both here. She always said this house was meant to be filled with family." "She was right," Sarah said quietly. Emma looked up from her calculus textbook. "Grandpa, my guidance counselor, asked me what I want to study in college." "And?" I told her engineering. "Like you and Mom. Is that crazy? After everything that happened with the company?" I thought about Morrison Engineering. About the decades I'd spent building something I was proud of. About how Victor had corrupted it, destroyed it. But also about how engineering had given me a career, a purpose, a way to provide for my family. "It's not crazy," I said. "What Victor did to Morrison Engineering doesn't change what engineering is. It's still about solving problems, building things that matter, making the world better. That's what I did for 40 years, and it's what your mother would have done if Victor hadn't stolen that from her." Sarah came to stand behind Emma, putting her hands on our granddaughter's shoulders. "If you want to be an engineer, be an engineer. Just promise me you'll be careful who you trust with your work." "I promise, Mom." Later that day, Marcus stopped by to update us on the trial. Victor had pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He'd get 25 years minimum. The others in his network were falling like dominoes, each one cutting deals to reduce their own sentences. "Sarah, the FBI wants to offer you a consulting position," Marcus said. "They're building a task force focused on business-related fraud and money laundering. They want someone who understands how legitimate companies can be corrupted. Someone who's lived it." Sarah looked at me. "What do you think, Dad?" I thought about what we'd lost, what we'd survived, what we'd learned. "I think you should take it," I said. "I think you should take everything Victor tried to steal from you and use it to stop people like him. That's justice. That's legacy." Sarah smiled, and for the first time in 6 months, it reached her eyes. "Okay, I'll do it." That evening, after dinner, I stood at my living room window watching the sunset. The maple tree Margaret and I had planted swayed in the breeze, its leaves bright green with spring growth. Behind me, I could hear Sarah and Emma laughing about something on TV. My phone buzzed. "James from the senior center. Poker night Thursday. You coming this time?" I smiled. "I'll be there." Because I wasn't just existing anymore. I was living again. My daughter was alive. My granddaughter was safe. My family was healing. Victor had tried to take everything from us. But the things that mattered most, love, loyalty, courage, family, those couldn't be stolen or corrupted or destroyed. Those were ours forever. And that was worth more than any company, any legacy, any fortune. That was worth everything.